All right. Hello, everyone, for another live stream with me. I'm Sarah Marks. I write under two pen names, Sarah Marks, my own name, and SR Marks, where I write horror and dark fantasy and like not so dark fantasy. And then Sarah Marks is romance and chick lit. It is another Sunday night. It is one where I have had one of those weekends where I've been super productive and am now exhausted as I get ready to start my work week. And I am 55% sure I have a cold. But it is all like it's winter. It's hard to tell. So it is still snowing outside here in Massachusetts, and that's going to make this probably fine. It's been doing this all day. It was anticipated. Cedric has been out for his poop because dogs got to do that. And we've had dinner. And now it's time to focus on the writing moving forward. So, what are we working on tonight? I am about halfway through the Modern Persuasion edit. I actually spent some time with it today, and I think that it's in a really good place. I'm very excited about it. I have shared the new cover, with people over on Patreon, those who support me there, my collaborators, and they will see that this week. I will have maybe if I remember to do this, one little bit more preview. If you've seen my Instagram posts or Facebook posts, there are other hints at what's coming. I'm also working with my cover designers on the Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse cover, which will be similar in the sense of you will recognize that these are a series as opposed to this cover of Modern Persuasion, which matches nothing else. And I'm very excited about it. It did mean that all the covers had to change to make sure everything matched. And I will talk about what I plan to do with the original covers if I haven't before. Anyway, so where am I? We're out of New York. We've gotten through PubCon, and today I spent some time thinking about what it is that Emma actually knows before PubCon about her career, because that's where I'm really enhancing it. Chicklet makes there's difference between chicklet and romance in writing. They are not the same. Romance is really focused on the romantic journey of two people, which is why you often see romance novels written in two points of view, his and hers. But when you're dealing with chicklet, you're dealing with her journey, and her journey is not necessarily romantic. The less romance there is, the more women's fiction the story is. But when you add in the romance and there's romance to her journey, a romantic relationship in her journey, then you have chicklet. So it's a little bit of both with chicklet versus the romance of romance books and the woman's life journey that is women's fiction. How can you tell? Well, if her journey is about opening up to love, finding love, being in a healthy relationship, transitioning love, if it's about a romance journey, then it's a romance book. And if there's sex, that doesn't mean anything. It just means there's sex. There are degrees of sex. Like these are low heat for my series of 21st Century Austen. But the Yom Tov, which is far more securely placed in a romance genre, it is heavy heat. That's just the way I wanted to write that series. I wanted the heavy heat romance fans to have something for Jewish holidays. But Modern Persuasion, very low heat, a lot of smoldering, a lot of tension. But her journey came in the background in this original version. It was there. It still is her journey. And part of her journey is being open to a new relationship with Frederick, thinking she can have that again. But there was more there, and it was much more the undertone of the story, the subtext, that her career was in jeopardy. And I felt that if I was going to take the time and edit this and enhance it, there was a chance for me to talk more about her journey professionally. So there's what she knew before PubCon started, what she learned as PubCon went on, and what she's learning as she's on tour with Frederick. So a lot of work today was me kind of outlining that for myself again, reminding myself she doesn't know this yet. This hasn't happened. She doesn't know this, and she's going to find out about it at this point. especially once they get to LA, which they're almost at. I think this chapter gets them right into LA and we start looking at what's happening with her. My hope is to get through chapter 12 tonight, and I'm gonna do the 10-minute sprints that I usually do. So here we are in LA. She is realizing that she is quite unhappy, that she needs to think about what is going on with her professional world and what that means, and the fact that she's been forced onto the tour. I think last week the chapter we worked on, or I worked on, was the chapter where she was basically told she has to go on this book tour regardless of what she really wants. And now she's on this tour and she has to decide, she has to balance the I've been forced to go on this tour with the now I'm on this tour with my ex. And one of the last things I edited before while I was out today for a little while, because I did go to a cafe to work. One of the things I worked on was the benefit dinner in New York, where Frederick's most recent ex-girlfriend shows up, and people start realizing that the woman they always thought Emma would be like is not. They imagine this petite, blonde, hyper energetic extrovert, and really she's not. She's everything that is the opposite. She is tall, she is brunette, and she is an introvert who is very well organized, and it shows. So, the woman they thought she was and the woman she really is are two different things. And that's where I'm going to focus on writing as we get to LA, is her getting a little deeper into her thoughts as they reach the halfway point of this tour, as she's been dealing with this for weeks. Patrick has now revealed that he knows what happened between her and Frederick, that in fact all of Frederick's friends know what happened, whereas none of Emma's friends know. None of Emma's, well, really her family doesn't know. So Louisa, who is on tour with them, is the only one who doesn't know. And soon Seth, who ends up engaged to Louisa, he knows who Emma is to Fred. Louisa will remain the only one who doesn't know for quite a while. Um, in fact, technically to the end of the book, because all of Frederick's people and none of Emma's people know what's going on. So that's where we're going to start now, is getting into chapter 12. And then after this, we'll talk about what some other things are that are going on with this. All right. All right. So little changes were made, primarily just to flesh out the scene itself, what was happening, how Emma is feeling, the fact that she had this conversation with Patrick the chapter before. It ended with the emotions sort of breaking out. Finally, in the earlier versions, there's a lot of moments where I just leave it at she wanted to cry, she started to cry, and there had been a lot of feedback that she spends a lot of time crying, and I'm like, there's a disconnect here. There's a reason she always wants to cry, and it's primarily um because she's put all of these emotions away and put them in a compartment and put them away. She's compartmentalized her feelings about breaking up with Frederick, and his presence is bringing this all back up to the surface. So she is feeling emotionally overwhelmed and does not know how to process that. And I find when people don't know how to process their emotions, they tend to cry them. And I'll admit, I am one of those people. So you tend to be overcome with the need to cry in those cases. And that's where she is. But what I've been able to do is sort of layer that with some more of the context of why she's dissolving into tears so often. But here we are on the plane. She's tried to sleep, and I'm playing over why is she overwhelmed? Why is she anxious? It's about the the fantasies in her head of how Frederick's friends are going to treat her because she has hurt him so deeply, and they know this side of the story. They know his pain and how he felt and how he coped. Meanwhile, she's also thinking of her job, which is she can't make any sense of what is going on because she is a glorified babysitter. She doesn't need to be on this tour. We've got Patrick, we've got Louisa, and we've got Emma. Emma should be home working with authors, editing books, publishing those books. Being on a tour defeats the purpose of her. She is taking 5 steps back in her career. This is what somebody like Louisa should be doing. What she hasn't talked about yet, and she's still not putting it together, that is why she hasn't thought about it yet, is why was Christy going on this tour? What was happening there? She's thought about it a little earlier in the PubCon stuff when she's talking to Christy about it, but there really is the sense of Christy has dismissed it as they just want to make sure their celebrity client is happy, their celebrity author is happy and on this tour and does well because there's a lot riding on it. And what Emma doesn't really know is why there is so much riding on it. There's hints. She knows her mentor and boss Karen has passed on books. She talks about how she's really good at picking books, especially award winners, but she doesn't really talk about what Karen is good at. And what comes out later in the book is that Karen has been passing on a number of projects that turned into bestsellers for other publishers, including, and this will come out, but was not in the first draft, but it will come out that she passed on Frederick's book. That when Frederick submits, and this is something that sort of developed over the years, when Frederick submits his book, which will be in a prequel novella soon, he does it with all of Emma's edits on it. She has gone through, it's not a tract because this was like 8 years before. This was early. I'm trying to think of when this would have been. This would have been like the late aughts, the late 2000, so like 2009, 2008, 2007. Tracking changes was a thing, but she would have just gone through with the different color text and strike through and made changes. And he has not taken those out of her draft when he is his draft when he has submitted them. They're all still there. So when Christy talks about recognizing Emma's edits, that her fingerprints on it, it's because she's looking at those. And if Christy saw them after Karen passed, then Karen saw them and knew exactly who this Frederick was, remembered what had happened, put it all together, and has refused this. And then Christy comes in and is like, no, 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 we want to publish Frederick Wentworth. So there is this, Karen might have screwed us over on another book. We want to make sure we know that he is a success because we have lost so many successes. So there is that. And it's a lot. And Emma is being punished for Karen's sins because they can't punish Karen directly because she is an executive, but they can punish Emma and thus her by Emma's So this is why authors are specifically asking for Emma as their editor. They want to work with her. Tom Scott, the author at the beginning, who was the one who invited her to the breakfast panel, he will work with her no matter where she goes. And this is the story. There's rumors that she will be leaving this company because people are not getting the editor they want to work with, but she is available. But so things are happening. They're writing it into the contract that they will only work with her, which is not something people do. But their agents are getting panicky because this is the reason they're coming to this publisher. They want her. Um, and then there's conversations, and here she is being sent on a book tour with her ex. Not that they know that, but glorified babysitter. And well beyond her pay grade. Louisa and Patrick could have done this. Even just Patrick could have done this. And which is why at the end of this part of the book, the second act, the second half, the end of the first half of the second act, Patrick's gonna bow the fuck out because he is useless on this tour. He is again a glorified babysitter because Emma's there. Why should Patrick be there? If Emma can't walk away, if Louisa can't walk away, he doesn't need to be there. So he gets to be the one to step out because he's his own boss, which is nice for Patrick. We love Patrick. Anyway, so that's where we are. And of course Louisa wants to just have fun. She wants to go to the beach, and Emma's like, I want to go to Cape Cod. And then something has to come out now. And that is the fact that Emma has an appointment with her father's old colleague who has started his own publishing company in California, which now adds the layer in that Emma can't deny, and that is that there is another opportunity that she did not see the full opportunity before her. She is so committed to life in New York, which Frederick repeatedly says he does not want. He does not want a life in New York. He has ended a relationship because she wanted to be in New York. He does not want to be there, but Emma does because that's where publishing happens. That's where her industry is, but that is shifting. And as I was writing this originally, that was shifting out of traditional New York publishing and into not necessarily other cities, but a much more complicated system than it had ever been. So that's where I'm going to pick up next. She's going to have to reveal that she is meeting with this guy, Ted, and he is offering her and has repeatedly offered her a job. And suddenly she is considering it, but only because she doesn't know what else to do at this point. So that is where we'll go next for the next 10-minute stretch. All right. So we're down in LA. Emma is Emma's going to Patrick and Victor's house for dinner, and that's where some of the details are going to be shared with her about what's coming up. She's officially in countdown mode in that they only have a week in LA and then a couple days in Chicago before she gets back to New York, and she can just walk away from all of this. This is how you can tell we're at almost at the second half of Act Two, or the end of the first half of Act Two. There is a little bit more that has to happen in LA, but Emma has to have, and I'm still thinking about what this will look like, but it's a mirror moment. Um, it's where she stops and she thinks, I want something that that I didn't realize I wanted, or I'm going to do this to get what I wanted. Um, and what she thinks she wants is not necessarily Frederick related. At this point, it's going to be professional. She's going to have to decide what she wants to do. She's going to realize they have switched positions. Initially, when she refused to marry him, it was because she needed to be in New York with her father. That's where the job was. That's where her future was. And it didn't matter that she loved him. She wouldn't know anybody. She would be miserable. And then she'd get depressed and then she'd hate and resent him. Um, but now it's all switched. Now she doesn't wanna necessarily be with her family in New York because they have exhausted her, stretched her to her limits. Her career is not going anywhere in New York. She is, for whatever reason, lost that grip that she had. She's going to have a job offer in LA, and she's going to have met Frederick's friends and become friends with one of them, and figured out that she would have been fine, that she would have made friends, she wouldn't have resented him. Her position has switched at our mirror moment. But while she is in a position to make some decisions about her job, she doesn't want to do that without him, because that would also make her miserable to be in the same city as him, but without him. This is part of the reason she's gotten through New York intact without running back to him. It's because she can put him out of her mind and not have to see him all the time. But she suspects in LA, becoming friends with Victor and Patrick, becoming friends with Sammy, who will eventually get to, means she will very likely see him. So her job situation is what she's going to have the mirror moment about first, and she's going to resign herself to just trying to make New York better, but then towards the end, she'll realize she has changed, he has changed, they both wanna be together, and she's going to change everything, much to what she thinks will be everyone's chagrin, but turns out to be fine for everybody except her older sister, Elizabeth. But it's Elizabeth. So that's that. So we're gonna do one more sprint, and then maybe I'll show you the preview of, because no one's here, which is pretty much par for the course. No, not even the Russian bots and spammers. That's sad. Maybe one will show up. And I'm gonna keep doing these because these are kind of fun and these have kept me working. Um, yeah, so that's what I'm gonna work on for the next 10 minutes, and then I will wrap up. All right, that's the end of chapter 12. I still have to decide if I want to add a little more to the end of that chapter, but Emma's on the brink of realizing things, and she's still living a little of denial, but she's playing things over and over in her head, and that's the first step to realizing that things aren't what you want them to be. Um, all right, let's stop the screen share because I'm gonna change what I share with you to show you the next preview of the new Modern Persuasion cover. I've seen the final version. I'm immensely happy with it, but now you can see some of the bottom. This is an illustrated cover, and I really wanted to keep it illustrated, not just because the modern aesthetic is illustrated. Actually, Chiclet's probably always been illustrated, uh, especially some of the early ones, and now the rom-com Chicklet subgenres are going back to that, and the cover designers I'm working with have been really good. This is the one for Modern Persuasion, and I have seen the first draft of the one for the next book, Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse, which will come out this May, if I get everything done in time, which is always a valid question to ask. Will I be able to get things out and done in time? So far, so good. This has been a very productive year. There's a lot going on that will be happening over the next few months, including I might be moving into a different space. I have a friend who has a studio space that she's looking to rent out to a number of writers so that we have a shared writing space. I've seen it. It's great. The price for me is right. And there'll be very possibly the live streams will be there. I might be able to do them more often because the setup will be a little different than what I'm dealing with here, which is always important because this is a very limited space. As much as I've made this little nook in the corner my own, this space is not the greatest for. It's a guest room and an office and a studio and the catch-all for the extra furniture I have because of what I inherited over the years. Um, so there's that. What are we going to do next week? Next week, I will very likely be taking off. I'm not entirely positive yet. I have a festival, Winterfest in Lowell next weekend, where I will be selling copies of my books, and it'll be fun. I'll be with other writers. Oh, excuse me. It's definitely the end of my day. I will be with my friend Lisa, who does paranormal cozy mysteries, my friend Matt, who does a little bit of everything under sort of the speculative fiction umbrella, and my friend Aaron, who I think will have some of his own smaller pieces, but he'll be talking about the writing group. He'll be there sharing our writing group mill pages that I used to belong to and sometimes still show up and hang out with them on their Sundays during the day. But I will be doing that, and that will very likely wipe me out. I mean, this is me on a weekend where I do very little because there was just very little to do. Also, I will next week be exhausted from doing Winterfest. Um, and then I might not be working if I do this. Well, no, the next time I do a live stream, it's quite possible I will not be working on Modern Persuasion specifically anymore. I will still be working on a Modern Persuasion something, either what I'm calling Frederick's Bad Date, which is bonus content that will be offered for a Kickstarter campaign that I'm considering either now or in the future, which is a second. It's difficult to explain. It would be like if you were reading your own bad date with Frederick. And then there is Frederick's Healthy Coping Mechanism, the working title for this novella that I'm working to finish for the relaunch of Modern Persuasion and the launch of Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse, and will be a freebie given away with signing up for my mailing list, and will also get included in the next edition of A Little More Modern Persuasion, which I am putting together a new edition of, with stories from the other a little more collections that relate to Modern Persuasion, because each book has stories that connected to the other book. So that will very likely be in there'll be whole new editions of all of them so that there's overlap, especially as I start working on a little more unraveling Carrie Woodhouse later this year, to come out either in December or January of next year. Um, so March is going the end of February, and the March is going to be more editing, lots of fun, but maybe some writing that isn't already written. But I'm looking forward to that. And then there'll be a writing retreat with my friend Rona in March, where there might be some live stream content. I don't know, it depends on the Wi-Fi, but we'll deal with that when it happens. I might even be home by that point, um, by the point of my normal live stream period. So I don't really know. It's going to be fun. But until then, have a great week. I hope to be able to show you the cover of Modern Persuasion in the next few weeks, just in time to release this new edition. Happy Valentine's Day. If you're watching the Super Bowl, this gives you plenty of time to catch up with where the game is. And I'll talk to you all later.